It has been wild up in these YouTube streets lately. And I'm not just talking about the usual drama community stuff, even though I do have a few things to say about that today, too. I'm talking about in the evangelical quiverful, well, not even quiverful, the evangelical groups on Twitter. It's been insane. It has been drama central, but I started thinking about it. It's because we're almost upon Christmas, and Christmas is kind of evangelicals Super Bowl. That and Easter. Easter is all about getting everybody saved. Christmas is about getting them all saved through the story of Jesus. And it takes some very weird places. Hey, Prairie, how are you doing this morning? It has been quite the last couple of days here, I've just got to say. Okay, if you know who I am, great. If you don't, I'm Suzanne Tidkamar. I used to write a column called No Longer Quivering for Pathos. It dealt with evangelical quiverful movement and many other parts of evangelicalism. These are all my opinions. As Rennell Smith likes to say, do your own research. Don't decide I'm the last arbiter of everything, because clearly I'm not. Don't bully anybody, please, that I talk about in any way, shape, or form. And just don't be nasty in the comments to anybody. You can disagree without being nasty. Okay, we are in for a ride this morning. It's minus 14 air temp here. We're hibernating. And we're good. Well, I'm glad that you're good, Prairie, because I would not be good in that. I put the sweater on when it gets to 70 here. So I'm glad it's you and not me, because you sound like you're better equipped for it. So I'm not equipped for that. But the Papagayo winds have arrived here, and it started to be around 100 every day now. So it is suddenly flipped, like it does every year when dry season hit, where it gets dark, it gets very, very, very hot, and the winds come. It's actually kind of nice. I've been out going swimming, except I have really bad allergies right now. So mostly I'm just hunkering down in here under the air conditioner, waiting for my allergies to lift, feeling like crud. So that's how I'm getting all of this. Hey, Christine. Hey, number one fan. That's how I'm getting to see all this. Tamarindo at Christmas time is miserable. I just want to tell you, miserable. If you ever book a trip to come here, don't do it Christmas and New Year's week. Why? Because everyone from San Jose comes down here. Number one. Number two, everybody with money from America comes down here. So we end up with everybody and their brother in a tiny little sleepy town that suddenly turns into what the population of, well, I can't say Manhattan because it's not quite that big, but it goes from maybe area RFD with drugs to Panama City Beach in high season. So it's kind of like that. It's pretty awful. I'm not looking forward to it being 22 degrees where I am in Florida. Number one fan, the last time I was in Florida and it got like that, iguanas were freezing and falling out of the trees, and people were forgetting. And I'm going to tell you, don't do this. Don't put an iguana in some. Don't say, "Oh, that poor iguana," and pick him up and put him in your car or anything, because guess what happens when it gets warmer? Yep, they come back to life. So, because it's Christmas week and it's Christmas adjacent, we have seen a lot of really bad behavior in the evangelical front. I mean, tons. Stuff I don't even have the time to figure out here, like Gurl defined begging for money. There's that. They're saying they need like $38,000 by the end of the year to keep doing what they're doing, which no one is really sure what that is, other than making silly videos and churning out the occasional book. And Bethany's How to Make Money. But here's what I have noticed. A lot of guys are coming out of the woodworks, a lot of evangelical men, and they're telling everybody about how loving they are and how supportive and how they love you and all this stuff. And when the rubber meets the road, ain't nothing changed. They're just the same old, same old. They've just put on their Christmas we love everybody stance, which I've seen so many times in so many churches. And it's great if they actually mean it, but many times they mean it right up until you challenge them on something that they think is foundational and you know it's just extraneous. I'm seeing a lot of that going on Twitter, and this is kind of off-putting. The other thing I'm seeing on Twitter is people who are in the process of deconverting, like Robin thinks, who are unstable in all their parts. They just aren't very good at anything. Robin has been, everyone's been showing me her tweets lately on everything, and I would say we would be on the same side normally because she's against fundamentalism. But just because someone is against fundamentalism or certain kinds of evangelicalism doesn't automatically make them your friend. There are ways to disagree and still be friends. Somebody posted today the 10 biggest hits of this woman, of Robin Thinks. And basically, she's been bashing anybody who's been married. She's been bashing anybody who has a single girl ministry for silly reasons. And one of the silliest things she did was she favored the abuser in the Depp Heard trial, if you can imagine that. Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. And so now she is pushing belief in Amber Heard, which I'm kind of like jaw dropped at. It's a constant free-flowing stream of misogynistic behaviors. And I'm just jaw dropped at all the crap that's coming out of her mouth, including the fact that she thinks that we've turned the act of sex into an act of violence, those of us who have kind of left. I'm not looking for, okay, so I haven't missed anything. So be really careful out there. There are a lot of wolves in sheep's clothing. That are these pastors that are trying right now to seem humble and kind and inclusive. Yet when you press them, they're not. So just avoid those guys. And people who are basically abusers of their own selves and how they're talking to you, who are deconverting, stay away from them, like Robin thinks. I've just been flabbergasted everything everybody's sharing with me about her. There are ways to disagree and still be friends. And sometimes you can agree with someone you would never be friends with. Exactly. And not only that, I got to pull this up because this was a quote the other day that I had to, I actually had to share because I didn't share it on Twitter, but I shared it on Facebook because I have a lot of friends there that we were all just going, yep, 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 yep. Here we go. It is the mark of an educated mind to be able to entertain a thought without accepting it. Aristotle. Yes, and that is basically sort of what I want to talk about a little bit today, too. I now texted with Sheila Ray Gregory the other day, and I like Sheila. Don't get me wrong. I like Sheila. I think Sheila has done a very large amount of good in the community because she did a survey among evangelical women across the board, hardcore all the way to deconverting. She got everybody was allowed to say their piece in this thing. And then she compiled the statistics in the interviews, and I wasn't surprised, but apparently she was. She wrote a book called The Great Sex Rescue, which I've read it. It's a good book. It has there's a lot of wisdom there, even if you're not a believer. There's a lot there. And basically what she uncovered is there are a whole lot of women that are very unhappy with their sex lives in the church and don't have any kind of emotional or physical intimacy, not true intimacy. So she addressed that, and I thought she did it in a pretty decent, respectful way. Now, I know there are a lot of men that will disagree with me about that. A lot of the same, oh, I love you right now because it's Christmas, guys. But where she took it the other day was she started talking about how evangelicalism as a whole, across the board, creates better, stronger marriages and more and better sex. Oh, girl, I disagree. She started like quoting Barna and all of that, the Barna statistics on so much of that. Here's my problem with Barna statistics and some of the other ones. Self-reported. Self-reported figures. I talk about that in my book a little bit too, because some of the things that evangelicals claim they're self-reported, like infidelity numbers. So I was looking at the infidelity numbers alone, and the self-reported one is quite low with evangelicals. I, in my old church, know a solid 15% that I know of that had affairs. Hey, Porky. So you have this hardcore group that I know had affairs that confess openly to it. And you know that's not the only group that did this, because if a self-reported group is at a certain amount, you can guarantee it that it's probably a good double that. And some of the statistics that I was looking at that I was challenging her on is some of the ones that actually come from Barna. Let me read you some really eye-shattering statistics. Okay, these are not necessarily all evangelicals. 40 million Americans or more are regular visitors to porn sites. The average visit lasts 6 minutes and 29 seconds. There are 42 million porn websites. The porn industry's annual revenue is more than NBA, NFL, and MLB combined. 47% of all families in the United States report that pornography is a problem in their home. Pornography use increases the marital fidelity rate by more than 300%. 94% of all children will see porn by the age of 14. 56% of American divorces involving one party having an obsessive interest in pornography. 54% of evangelical males say they look at pornography at least once a month. So these statistics are kind of scary, a lot of them. 70% of Christian youth pastors report they have at least one teen come to them for help in dealing with pornography in the last year. 68% of church-going men and over 50% of pastors view porn once a month or sooner. The young men in the church, 18 to 24, 76% actively, routinely search for porn. 59% of pastors say married men frequently seek their help for porn usage. Only 13% of self-identified Christian women say they never watch porn. So 87% of Christian women have watched pornography. 57% of pastors say pornography addiction is the most damaging issue in their congregation. 69% say porn has adversely impacted the church. So what does that have to do with Sheila and her statistics? Well, when you have those kind of statistics, and the reason I'm bringing up the statistics on porn, and I've talked about this a little bit in my book as well, is the fact that you look at these things and you know that if the church as a whole is struggling with pornography, then that does not mean there is that much emotional or physical intimacy going on in relationships. There may be lots of sex, but it may be robotic. It may not be what I would call satisfying. It may be just routine sex. The stuff we all do sometimes. And not saying that every sexual encounter has to be mind-boggling and blows the lid off the house or any of that. I'm not saying that at all. But her statistics of marital satisfaction, marital happiness, intimacy, sexuality that she is basing her stuff on, there is just no way in hell that they're real. If pornography is this much of a problem in Christian families, before you even throw in the kind of obsessive control that certain Christian men exert over their wives, there is no way that the statistics of happiness and sexual satisfaction that she is citing are legitimate at all. And I love Sheila, but Sheila, you're wrong on this. Being able to say you're wrong and for you to say, no, I disagree is a great thing, because these are the conversations I think that we need to be having before anybody could ever get back to the reality of life. Because what good is belief in Jesus if people are running out there acting like this, just hateful all the time? So I'm not talking about Sheila and I's disagreement. I mean, oh my goodness, this morning I saw somebody who was supporting a certain former president who was talking about having this self-identified straight male evangelical was talking about willingly about to have sex with our former president. And this is somebody who's bragged about how straight they are. And I'm just like, so I don't know what's going on with the church in general, with the whole white patriarchy kind of church that has now affiliated themselves with some of the most hateful groups and theologies. And they're saying that the rest of us are sitting on the sidelines are saying, this must change, that we're all wrong. I know I'm getting way off my rant, but it's just, this has been working on me the last couple of days and last 3 or 4 days. And I've been so full of this stuff that my brain may be scrambled at this point. So while I'm sitting here watching all these different factions fight with each other, and people like the lady I mentioned earlier supporting Amber Heard and just crazy stuff going on, I'm just like blown away. And in the meantime, I'm trying to write this book. I'm trying to finish up, and I'm doing things like my daughter, who came to visit recently, started telling me about her first experience with drag queens. Her and another girl at the church were talking about the church, something that happened when she was 4, 5, 6, and 7. She called it My Fisher Price, My First Drag Queen Show, about a guy at our church who did a comedy routine dressed up like a church lady every year, and how that was their first exposure to drag queens. Now, my daughter's friend owns a restaurant that hosts a drag queen night once a month, and the former church members that we went to church with are losing their damn minds over this. And the one losing it the most is the guy who used to dress in drag every year. Really? I don't know. Maybe I just need to go back to bed. And in the meantime, I'm watching everything going on in our community and just like jaw dropped. I haven't even kept up with what's going on with our with she who may not be named. No idea what's going on with her right now, beyond the few little things that I've seen. We got Michelle Sabate, who's been begging for money from everybody and their brother, and I'm kind of like, what? Also have the Do Good Letters, who has teamed up with Nikki May and is taking pot shots at Erin. EKC people suck, and I'm just like going, what? I don't know, man. I don't know what is going on with all these communities. I was really surprised to see the Do Good Letters join the pettiest pile of people on the internet. I used to enjoy her content when it was books and things like reviews of The Handmaid's Tale, things like that. Then she had her falling out with Claire, which the ugly girls she has now associated her with went ahead and invented some crap about Claire, and I was unfortunately I believed it at the time. They swayed myself, and to my everlasting regret, I said I'm not sure about Claire, which I regret. I've apologized to her for it. I poked some gentle fun at her about it a couple of times too, and I talked to Do Good Letters quite a few times about this, and we both had our concerns with Claire at the time. I didn't realize until recently that people end up in some pretty strange emotional places from online. For the life of me, I can't understand why. If you're writing and you're involved in the community, that is one thing to be constantly looking at it and saying, hey, this isn't good or whatever. But to be just a random person, to be that kind of impacted by the opinions of people that don't know you very well, that kind of just blows my mind. So this is my Christmas rant. Since I'm stuck inside and I can't go to my favorite beach, we went on Monday to Playa Grande. Monday would have been, what are we on Thursday? It would have been the 19th. So it's not even super close to Christmas yet. The parking lot was full. We had to take some other parking lot. And it was just miserable. So I have to avoid the beaches here until after the 1st. Backwoods Barbie and Molly are very bad on begging. Someone sent Molly dish soap that she had on her Amazon wish list. I don't believe she ever buys things for her home herself. Number one fan, that could well be. I don't know Molly that well beyond her fighting with KJ, but I can believe it because I've seen her beg for DoorDash, I think it was, beg for stuff. And I know Backwoods Barbie is just an e-beggar constantly, and I don't get. I don't get it. I don't get it. I don't get it. It kind of blows my mind because I don't beg for super chats. If somebody wants to give me a super chat, that is great. If they don't, that is great. I'm not worried about that. This is not a source of income for me. If I make money off this at all, I buy yarn. And all I do is fund my awful arts and crafts habit. That's it. But I see people on here that have turned this into the most e-bagginest thing on the planet. It's like, yeah, mama needs a brand new Roomba. Please send me a Roomba. So I see people do this. And Michelle Savate is, and I've never heard her pronounce her name, so I don't know if I'm saying it right or not. So if I'm not, I do apologize. But Michelle is one of those people too that just bags up a storm, and I can't for the life of me understand why anybody would fall for that. Okay, so you're a supporter and you want to help somebody a little bit. Okay, I can sort of see that if they get into a hole. But some of these people, and Backwoods Barbie, I'm looking at you. It's not a matter of them getting into a hole once or twice and then begging for money. It becomes a way of life. They're kind of like, well, I got a car payment that I gotta make. You better cough up the money. No, big old tears. May I suggest something? Get a job. To borrow the vernacular and the song by who is that? It's one of those bands, one of those sort of punk bands from like the early 2000s. I won't pay, no way. I've thought about crowdfunding to go to, say, Genevieve, Missouri, to do some filmed history interpretation that is hysterically accurate. Choctaw representing my ancestors. That would be different if you did that. It would be one time and you would be asking for funding for that. I think it's very different to do it for those for worthy things. And I think that the historical things you're talking about are good. But I think begging for Cheetos or DoorDash or whatever is just pretty ridiculous. All of the items on Barbie's Amazon wish list last year were for her instead of her daughter. What a shame. Number one fan, I can see that. I watched two historians from St. John that make historical recipes that are very well researched. Absolutely. That song is on the album called Americana, I believe. Yep. Oh, I'm gonna have to watch them. So yeah, that song just makes me laugh every time I watch the video when they're marching through. It looks like the same town that was in Back to the Future. Offspring, that's it. Thank you, Prairie. I'm having a senior moment, and that involves a whole lot of a whole lot of allergy pills this morning. My brother introduced me to them. My kids play the Offspring, and I didn't really get into it when they were doing it. I've since gone back and re-embraced my punk rock roots, and I'm even listening to the newer punk rock bands and liking them, liking the Offspring along with everything else. Ah, Ronnie and Justine are so cool. I'm gonna have to watch them. I'm gonna have to watch them. I'm always fascinated when people start making these things. My fruitcake recipe is like 300 years old. It's come down through my family, and I think that some of these recipes that have come down like this are they're very interesting, and it's different from how our modern tastes are with everything too. My brother introduced me to Offspring when I was 14, and I'm flipping obsessed. Yep. Did you ever see where Backwoods Barbie had a video where the phone calls of Mary Brown and her catfish are being played? I felt bad for Mary. No, I did not. But I do want to say this about reality TV and drama channels. Girl, put down whatever it is you're using to film, whether you use your iPad, your laptop like I am, whatever, put it down and stop it. Just because someone is on a reality TV show doesn't mean they don't deserve some basic human decency. I just, I don't know. Maybe I'm getting super old, but I just don't understand. It's like she who we cannot mention and some of the things she's done, and we're just all like backing away. It's like, why on earth would you expose this about this person? There are things about everybody I know that I generally don't expose, and definitely not about reality TV stars. And some of it's pretty horrific. I have really been amazed to see all the um, hatred of Todd Chrisley. Like I said, I barely knew who he was before he started tangling with who she shall not be mentioned. And to see the amount of angst there is out there against this guy, I'm like, I'm going to have to go watch his show, I guess, because I don't get it. And to see Backwoods Barbie begging continually is just too much. And then to see her turn around and use the kind of info that if somebody had on her, she would lose her damn mind if you said, well, I have these messages. The Backwoods Barbie and her ex that I am going to play now for your amusement, for us to digest and try to figure out what's going on. I don't get it. You know, you would think that, well, no, I don't get all the interest in reality TV anyway. Like I've said, the only really reality TV I watch is that car wreck shit show that is Love After Lockup. And I don't spend my time looking up crap about those people because I don't care. I don't care enough about what's going on the screen to be able to say, oh, well, so and so had 3 abortions, and let's listen to this phone call that between John Miller and his various women. I just don't. It doesn't interest me. So I haven't kept up with Backwoods Barbie, but I've noticed that she has gone into KJ territory now with some of the things that she does and the things that she says. And she's even gone into KJ territory with what she asks for and what she claims afterwards, like begging she can't pay her car note and then turning around and saying, "Hey, y'all, we bought this big whatever it was." And I'm just like, how does anybody ever give her money? Why does anybody ever give her money? Why does anyone give Michelle Sabate money? Michelle Goes Live. I was really shocked to see that she was begging for money. I forgot what it was for, but she was claiming something to do with legal fees, maybe, or a ticket. And it was obviously she spent it on not 100% legal stuff. I'm just going to say that rather than accusing her of being a user. There's something going on there that is just not right. I don't know if it's alcohol, drugs, insanity. I don't know what it is. But the more I look, the more I'm like, okay, what was that all about? I don't get it. Oh, there's days like today, I think I'm just way too old for this world. I do not watch Backwoods Barbie, but the tapes were shared on a Facebook group that I am a member of. Oh my goodness. Number one fan. Ugh. And here I was sitting around last night waiting for Jill Rodriguez to make her special announcement, which turned out to be that her barely out of her teens daughter that got married in November is pregnant. Now, why you would announce that publicly to the world and not leave that to your daughter and son-in-law to do, I don't know. And why you would announce that early in a pregnancy when there's always a chance of anything could happen, I don't know. Like I said, I think the whole world has gone kind of tabloid and kind of crazy, and I don't get it. I don't get it at all. It's one thing to fundraise for things. Hey, Fernando, but it's a whole other thing to do it on the routine. It just is. Especially when you could be out there working a real job and making money. Now, I know I will have to defend Backwoods Barbie here. I know where she lives. There's not a lot of opportunity. There's not a lot of well-paying jobs. It kind of sucks. But at the same time, you just don't beg. One of the things, and this kind of plays into one of the things I found out about myself this week is I had a realization out of the blue that my mother had taught me from earliest childhood, you do not impose on other people. You just don't. You don't make things harder for everybody else. You go way out of your way to make sure that you don't impose on anyone. And I mean stupid ways. I got chewed out last year, not last year, this year, in the bathroom of the at Eat at Joe's because I was washing my hands. The bathroom there is tiny, tiny. I'm in there, my fluffy self washing my hands, and this lady pushed out of the stalls and asked and was standing there, and it's a small space. There's only room for one at the sink. I said, "Give me a minute. I'll be out of your way. Just 2 shakes of a lamb's tail." And I'm drying my hands off and getting ready to leave. And she started telling me, "Stop apologizing for the space you take up. Stop apologizing for having needs. You're blah, 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 blah. The patriarch has done this." And I'm looking at her like this because that's not what that was about. That was about being polite. That was about not taking up, not disconveniencing her, making things. So, anyway, I thought about that a lot. And she kind of has a point. But at the same time, no. But I realize that some of the things I get angry about, like getting angry about everybody trying to impose their will upon you on Twitter, angry about people e-bagging, all those things, a lot of them have a roots in that for me. And my mother relentlessly trained me for that. So I'll apologize if I'm in your way in the bathroom. I'll get that scuttle out of your way in a hurry. I wait for you to get out of the aisle before I'll push down the aisle, stuff like that, just little things. But it's not just that I do those things. I get angry when others don't do them. I got angry the other day when a clueless gringo, there's no other way to put it, drove his huge Toyota, whatever it was, SUV and drove to the first parking space outside of Walmart, which is marked electric vehicles only. Parked his enormous gas guzzle there. And I'm like, really? Really? So for me, that's where my hot button is. And that's what a lot of these things are I'm discussing today. So I'm trying to learn to let people make these mistakes without myself getting crazy, insane, pissed off. And I'm going to tell you, that is a chore. That's where my thing is. That troll is harping less on the Duggars. More okay, sister, more than Sister Wives. Yes, she is. Except that she harped on the Duggars yesterday. She's harping on Ginger Duggar's book. I have pre-ordered the book. I'm going to read it. I'm curious because I want to see how she justifies moving on. I want to see how she goes from very toxic to somewhat less toxic without realizing that someone less toxic is extremely toxic. Opposite Ginger because Ginger is on Ginger's journey. Ginger's married to Jeremy, who I don't think a lot of, but that's okay. He's her husband, not mine. And I'm just curious. I gotta admit, I'm curious. I want to see how she justifies it. And apparently, according to that troll over there, Anna ruined the annual ugly sweater party. I saw that. And I thought that has got to be the dumbest subject of all time to go after. She also was congratulating Ben Seawald for pulling Ginger out of her CULT with Bill Gothard. And yeah, she always puts the Duggar girls down. And not too long ago, she was picking on Jessa Seawald because, is it Ivy, the little girl, had a big bruise on her head. And the troll was just losing it going, oh my goodness, abuse. And I'm looking at that picture thinking, now, I remember when my son was a toddler. He walked around with an enormous bruise for a long time on his forehead because he was learning to walk, and he didn't walk, he ran. Ginger could have done worse than Jeremy, but probably not by much. He's a bigger fame hoe than Famey Duggar. Yes, he is. And you're right. She could have done worse, but not by much. I agree. And he definitely is. And that's why he's hitched himself to John MacArthur, the same pastor, my old pastor, hitched himself to. So I'm kind of sitting back here, kind of like, yeah, I see all these pastors and theologies they're all involved in and going, yeah, I can tell you where this leads. Children are constantly getting bumps and bruises. Exactly. And it's normal. It's a normal part of being a child because we don't want to bubble wrap them in bubble wrap. We just don't. Even with my daughter that had bleeding disorders, I never coddled her over anything like that because it would have been too easy. And I wanted her to have a childhood, a perfectly normal childhood. And she had her own bumps and bruises, and it wasn't always easy to do that. There were days when I was like cringing off and going, oh my goodness, do I intervene at this point or what? So that's just part of childhood. And my understanding is that Ben Seawald had blocked the troll. And here the troll is talking about how wonderful Ben is all of a sudden after putting him and Jessa down 50 trillion times for God knows what all. Does anybody remember when she was making fun of them for remodeling the parsonage that they moved into? and hinting that they somehow scammed the money to do so. Does anybody remember that? Anybody? Anybody? My child got a goose egg on the back of the head recently, walking with a bowl over her face. It was just a flesh wound, thank goodness. I am laughing over that because kids, if there's a way to injure yourself weird, a kid will find it. A kid will find it. And not just kids, I gotta say, I've had some weird, like broken noses and things over stupid stuff. So she's always hypercritical of the daughters and their husbands. And she doesn't want to understand that emerging from that kind of thought pattern is that kind of theology, that kind of groupthink is it's hard. And the last thing you need is people throwing rocks at you while you're doing it. Does that mean that we don't discuss it? Well, no, we discuss ideas all the time. I mean, like I said, this is why I was talking about this with that my head knocking the other day with, and I'm having brain farts. I can't think of her name. The lady that wrote The Great Sex Rescue. We're not all going to agree on everything. And sometimes we're going to look at things and go, I was really wrong about that. I just watched a video about the Chris Coleman created a monster. That happens, Fernando. And there's an appropriate way to discuss things. Yeah, there is. And the thing is, if you're a secure person, then you can discuss these things with people without holding it against them and without demonizing them. Just because somebody thinks differently than you does not mean necessarily they're wrong. You might not like what they're thinking. You may not like what they're doing. And you may eventually have to admit that you were wrong. Hell, I'm wrong all the damn time. All the time, frequently over stupid stuff. Hell, I'm wrong all the damn time. All the time, frequently over stupid stuff. The other day, I shared something with somebody that was a friend of my husband's about another friend because he asked me about the other friend, and I said, well, that other friend is Satan personified, which turned out to be the wrong thing to say, and it stopped all conversation. I shouldn't have said it. I should have controlled myself better than that. But kind of frankly, I'm kind of glad that I said it because it's out there now. That guy knows not to ever contact me about that crap again. I was dealing with him contacting me all the time, and it was becoming overwhelming. So now I know where the button is to turn that conversation off if it becomes overwhelming. So here I am just jumping all over like a frog on a skillet today. I can't help it. It's just been one of those weeks. That and the allergy pills are creating drama. I'm in the middle of making another quilt for my bed. This will be the third one I made, and I don't particularly like the other two, and I'm not sure I like this one. So it may be back to the quilting drawing board, and I may have a pile of quilts in this room up here where Pork likes to sleep. What the hell? So that's all that's going on in this world. I thought by now I'd be ready to publish my book. But what's happened is the explanation I'm going to give is like when my daughter came to me about the My Fisher Price first drag queen show. She told me, I did an outline of the chapter. I contacted her friend. I had a conversation over the course of 2 or 3 days with the friend. I started writing it up. When I got to the part where I talked about what happened afterwards, about her parents turning on me, I just shut down for like 3 days, 3 or 4 days. I just shut down. Traumatized, triggered, and thinking about it, and thinking and thinking and thinking. Before 4 days later, I went back and re-edited everything and took out that part and figured out a kinder way to talk about her parents because I did love them as very dear friends until I left church and they started throwing rocks at me with everyone else. because my daughter is still friends with this, I don't want to say girl. They're women now. They're in the 30s. They're early 30s. And I would never want to say anything that would hurt this young lady because she's precious to me still to this day. So we're talking from thought process to writing where I am now in that chapter, like 10 days. And I'll still have to go back and edit it again. So it's taking a lot longer because I'm having to stop and have freakouts over some of the stuff coming out. I was shooting for January 1st. Now I'm going to have to push it back by a couple of months because it's just been way too traumatic, number one. And number two, things come up all the time. Things come up all the time. Things emerge that I'm like, oh, I hadn't thought about that. That's exactly what happened. That's exactly what happened. So I'm going to go. I'm going to take my frog on the hot skillet ass somewhere else and work on my quilt, I guess, and wait for my stupid allergies to live. Something must be blooming outside. I don't know. So you guys have a great day. We're coming up on the holidays. There's not a lot of holiday cheer going on in this household because it doesn't feel like Christmas. And we're stuck inside until the world departs Tamarindo post New Year's Eve, post New Year's Day. New Year's Day, the town starts emptying out and we get our town back. And we like that. Love you guys. Have a great holiday season. If I don't see you before then,